start now, but say we were just talking about our breakfast choices, and
Yeah.
leave it to the reader, to the audience to decide what breakfast I had that made me tagged as a globalist, lid, and a free trader. What could be worse? What could be worse than a free trader?
Here's what I don't...
You're not a free trader.
I'm
categorically. Down to your breakfast choices.
No, I'm anti-free trade, mostly out of being a bleeding heart for the Mexican corn farmer. Mm-hmm. Just the way that NAFTA hollowed out the lifestyle there in Mexico for farmers, I think, is immoral.
You're anti-NAFTA from a pro-Mexico standpoint. That is super contrarian. That is really good. That is like having your cake and eating it too. Well done. Okay,
Thank
I
you.
love it. Very good.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
no one can attack you. You've covered all your flanks.
have I?
Yeah, I think so.
But here's my real question.
Yeah.
It seems like the tariffs are not causing the economic Armageddon that everybody on the left said they would. True or false?
I would say that we're not yet living in economic Armageddon.
So, like, maybe let the man have his tariffs.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what I mean?
I think there's definitely an interesting, like, partisan reaction in which, like, I don't know if this is the left or if this is liberals or progressives or just people who are anti-Trump, but there was a kind of rooting for the tariffs to crater the economy that was happening just out of partisan reasons. Like kind of like, look what's going to happen. And like a kind of, I think like a desire for some kind of obliteration just to like win.
Well, that's kind of like the people who want the children of anti-vaxxers to die from measles.
No, those people don't exist.
Yeah,
you think they want them to die? Not just like kind of get sick for a bit?
I have had conversations with people who
That's
have
terrible.
expressed it. Now, do they really mean that?
I wish
Are they being
death on no
glib?
one.
Yeah, it's in poor taste. It's gauche. Let's just say.
It's worse
Do you know
than
what I mean?
that.
Yeah. I mean, at the minimum.
Yeah, minimum.
Gauche.
Yeah.
I have heard that view expressed.
Right. It's like kind of like kind of comeuppance or maybe in some, yeah. No, I wouldn't share that. The tariff thing, no. I mean, look, like we would not be the 10,000th podcast to say that. Obviously, this used to be a nonpartisan / left populist position to be pro-tariff. So I don't think it could be no. I'm not sitting here rooting for them to fail, and I'm open-minded that like certain industries might benefit from them. I think the thing that's harder is like without a big kind of industrial policy, and for the record, like I'm not an expert on any of this, and this is not what we're supposed to be talking about, but like I think without like a matching kind of like industrial policy and like investment in sort of American manufacturing, the tariffs alone, unfortunately what it seems to be doing is just like making like supply chains harder for existing manufacturers and factories. So it's like, oh shit, like we were getting our like screws from like Windsor, Ontario, and now the screws cost more money. And so are we actually going to get it from Vietnam through some loophole? But on the other hand, you saw in the early days of the tariffs in early 2025, there was significant like big auto production that like migrated from Canada to Indiana. I think there was a Toyota plant in particular. And so like if you are talking about economic nationalism, like, yeah, that was good. If you're talking about the price of the car, maybe bad if they were making it cheaper in Canada. But like, yeah, a year into Trump's tariffs, it's probably too soon to say like success or failure.
But I feel like Trump is like he's like a super fab degrowth president. Do you know what I mean? If you're into the degrowth agenda, which I maybe am.
Maybe on manufacturing, but not on stuff like AI. Like,
oh no, totally.
Right?
I can't even. Did you listen to this is getting so far. Did you listen to the most recent Ezra Klein with the guy who's pretty high up at Anthropic?
No, I did not listen to it.
You should listen to it. It's truly one of the most deranged conversations I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I'll just briefly say that in it, Ezra Klein, who's like...
Are you about to describe who Ezra Klein is?
No, I was going to say somebody who I used to spend a lot of time complaining about, but now feel neutral.
Interesting. You've gone from...
Because I found out the real tea on him, which is that he's a polyamorist.
You're saying this out loud?
I mean, it's on background or whatever. Like I guess, yeah. Could he come after me for libel? I mean, if you're living the alternative,
do you want to say alleged polyamorist?
No, I have like, I have incontrovertible.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Secondhand
incontrovertible secondhand proof. Yeah.
But my point is, if you're living that alternative lifestyle, I think you have to be prepared. If you're gonna be getting, it's Lent, so I'm not swearing.
More open-minded and psychedelic than you thought he might be.
No, to me, that's actually embarrassing. It is embarrassing.
Oh, you think he's
I think he's embarrassing. But I'm saying if you are, I mean, obviously. I mean, everything about him is embarrassing. Did you see his, like, new tats and stuff?
I'm too close professionally to someone like Ezra Klein to say anything like that.
Okay, so I'll just say that he's embarrassing. But my thought is, like, if you're going to engage in these alternative lifestyles, you have to do it proudly. So if people are going to come on a podcast and accuse you of it, this thing you actually do, you just need to, like, stand in solidarity with your questionable choices. You know what I mean? You should
invite him on the pod.
I have.
Okay, well, that would be a good episode. That would be a really good episode.
He's also from the Bay Area, so I think there's part of it where it's like, because Bay Area people are crazy.
Yeah.
The Bay Area is deranged.
Yeah. You're from the Bay Area.
I'm from I am from, like, the bedrock, the epicenter. I mean, what do you consider the epicenter? Like, if there's an earthquake, I'm from the rock part
what
of
neighborhood
the
is
city.
That? Epicenter?
I mean, people now are going to, like, fight me on this. It's near the Presidio.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm a city kid. We're getting I haven't even introduced you.
That's true.
Okay, so, hi. I'm Francesca.
Hi.
This is Critical Babe Theory. This is Simon Van Zyland Wood. I'm having, like, European last name pronunciation anxiety.
You did it perfectly.
Which I think shows that I'm, like, really egalitarian.
Well, we both have hyphenated names, which is not egalitarian to begin with. So.
Well, you have beyond a hyphen. What is the Van?
Van Zyl is just a Dutch name. So
I know, but what is is there a specific word for what a Van is?
It's O. It's like an Irish, you'd be like O'Leary.
I know, but there's got to be, like, a name, a very obscure word that just identifies the short initial name within a certain ethnic subgroup.
No, it just means of.
I know, but there's got to be.
You're saying that there's you could talk, like, there's a name for that thing?
Yes.
So that, like, if you're an O'Leary or an O'Flanagan, it's like, oh, that's the...
Yes.
I don't know.
But
Sorry.
somewhere in a dictionary...
I am me.
...that no one has. But you're a journalist.
That's true.
With New York Mag.
Yes, I'm a features writer at New York Magazine.
What does features mean? Fancy?
Yeah.
Oh, fancy writer.
Yeah.
What a life.
It means I write articles like this one.
Did you guys see this article?
Please show to the camera.
Can I say, I'm saying this.
Yeah.
Why did this not run as a cover story? I'm sorry.
No comment. That was a great cover story too.
That
was by my friend and colleague Reeves Weideman. It was about David and Larry Ellison.
It's a really disturbing visual.
Yes.
Really disturbing.
I think it's a great visual.
Okay.
I think it's
There's that, but
equally,
that's not
if
his
not
article.
more deserving than mine, which is this one.
Yeah, but I think yours really got to the heart of America.
Thank you.
Which is, like, nepotism looks the same all over. It's looked the same since the nepotes back in, what was that? Do you know, that's where, because it was the nephew of the Pope.
Is that right?
That's where nepotism came from. Yeah,
kind
nepote,
of like 25%
Italian.
believe you, but I really like that.
No, you should 100%. I have a very good education.
Uh-huh. It just sounds too good to be true. It sounds like, anyways.
Okay,
yes.
and I associate with a lot of classicists.
You
as
associate?
well. I do. I was a classicist.
Oh, you were in college or grad school?
In college, yeah. Wait,
good for
we're
you.
not getting. I know the
We were talking about my
snobbiest.
article. So we can't. Initially, Francesca reached out to me because she had read this article that I published in New York Magazine, where I am a features writer.
The takeover of Kirk Country.
Yeah.
Chilling, bone-chilling article.
It's about what happened on college campuses in the American right after the killing of Charlie Kirk. So after Kirk was assassinated, I think on September 10th of last year, I went to his memorial, from which that amazing photo by Mark Peterson was taken at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. And there was a whole article, practically a book that could be written about the memorial itself, which was just like a fascinating and important moment in American political history. But instead of just writing about the memorial, which I thought about doing, my editors granted me permission to spend the next 3+ months figuring out kind of what was going to happen next after this like really important youth conservative figurehead gets assassinated. And so I spent time on college campuses with like TPUSA and young Republican groups, mostly in the Deep South, places where like campus conservatism is like the dominant thing, not some kind of like closeted political persuasion, that it would be like down the street at Columbia. And so that's what I did. And then this is kind of the story of like the meaning of the assassination and then forecasting sort of how that would play out on the young right and the right in general. Yeah.
And the ascendancy of like Arch. Did you watch a lot of Star Wars growing up?
This is an amazing digression already. Arch ...
Like what's the head?
I want everyone to know that we're also going to talk about Epstein. In case you think
we're really going to talk about Epstein.
In case you think because this article came out last month and you want to hear about the Epstein files, we're going to get there.
I'll talk about Epstein anytime,
I actually want to know
place.
your thoughts on Epstein. I think they might be more important than mine. Based on your
I have
time
a
in the
grand-
entertainment cabal.
Oh, here's the problem. I'm a lone wolf. Always have been. I can see the judgment you're looking at.
I thought we were going to get more. Okay, go back to Star Wars. We'll get to Epstein later.
Arch.
Yeah, Arch.
No, what I'm saying is nobody's inviting me to illicit sex parties. I've been to gay orgies down in the Castro.
Okay, we can get to that.
I have been to, but like, there's nothing
Yeah.
particularly illicit about a gay orgy. Do you know what I mean? It's like
Not anymore.
It's a Wednesday at 8 in Chelsea. Whatever.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not a big deal. But those are the only kind of eyes wide shut style parties I get invited to.
Okay, so you're learning about the Epstein files the same way the rest of us are. From the outside.
Yes, from the outside, looking in. I sort of don't. Full disclosure, don't really care about Epstein at all.
You emailed me like a week ago and we're like, instead of talking about Charlie Kirk, can we talk about Epstein? I was I guess.
I know, but I think that it's even though I don't particularly care about him, I think it's emblematic.
It's important. I can tie it to stuff.
Yeah.
I can do grand unified theories.
We really don't. There's like nothing is to be achieved.
Yeah.
I mean, like this is like.
Oh, good.
Like,
yeah. No, that is like comforting. I do feel a lot of achievement pressure.
That is literally what life is.
Ezra and I feel a lot.
I can't speak. I mean, I can't. I've heard things about. Like,
did he write
I know
you back,
about
or did he just ghost you?
Life. Did he ghost me?
Yeah. Did he write you back when you invited him?
I think I've said some really horrible things about him. So
what am I getting myself into? Why? He's like a pretty nice guy. I mean, I've talked to him before. I used to feel this way and now I don't care anymore. He's like I think he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. That is amazing. Let's get to it later.
Okay. But my point, Arch,
Batman.
Nick, whatever's like the evilest ascendant evil character who's coming up in a Star Wars situation is like Nick Fuentes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who I'm pretty sure is just gay.
I cannot weigh in on that.
Yeah. But it doesn't seem unlikely.
I think the more interesting thing about his sexuality is his voluntary inceldom. So Nick Fuentes, like, everybody knows who he is, but he ends up looming, kind of shadowing over this piece because one thing that becomes really, really clear is that Charlie Kirk, you've got to like kind of if like your mindset, and I don't know the mindset of the average listener to this podcast, but like if your mindset is that Charlie Kirk was essentially, a right-wing villain in American life and you weren't particularly upset when he was assassinated, you've got to kind of torque it to understand that like from the perspective of the Gen Z and college right in particular, he was like the barely acceptable conservative. He was like holding the line, and like Charlie Kirk was seen as kind of a rhino and kind of an appeaser,
like a moderate,
kind of a moderate, which would shock people who basically were calling him a neo-Nazi in the wake of his death.
Yeah,
and he was, in a lot of ways, what I learned is the true extent to which he was holding back kind of darker forces, some of which are reflected in the rise of Nick Fuentes, and like the Fuentes. It's not just that they were like they represented different poles or different sides of the spectrum on the right. Like they were actually bitter enemies, and like there's a huge psychodrama between them that was playing out for years.
I know, it's kind of amazing. Do you think that Charlie Kirk eschatologically positioned himself as someone who was keeping back the tides of evil on the right?
Absolutely.
Or do you think that you think he thought that?
Yeah, 4 days before he died, he gave there was a interview published in the Deseret Times, the Mormon newspaper, because in Phoenix, a huge Mormon population,
right.
and they got a ton of access to Charlie Kirk. So the reporter who was really good was hanging out.
Phoenix is where he died. He was assassinated outside of Phoenix.
No, he was assassinated in Utah. By coincidence,
okay.
Another Mormon thing. And Tyler Robinson was raised Mormon. But that's
coincidence?
Actually, yes. But whatever. But like, anyways, it doesn't matter. The Mormon thing is a total sideshow. I don't know why I brought up the fact that it's a Mormon
Mormons
newspaper.
are interesting.
They are. We actually just published a cover story about Mormons.
I know. I read it. Yeah.
Okay. Whatever. The point is that he gave a newspaper interview in which he said, this was a direct quote from Charlie Kirk. He said, "Every day I'm holding back a revolution." So he very self-consciously appointed himself as the guy who wouldn't let the the Fuentes. So Fuentes is basically the only person he wouldn't talk to. Like Charlie Kirk is Mr. Free Speech, Mr. Open Discourse. He poses a big challenge to the left because he like meets them where they are and at their weakest point in some way. So he goes to campuses and say, I represent tolerance, you represent intolerance. Like
which in my experience is legit.
Yeah, and I think he exposed like a huge blind spot on the left, which is like you're from Bay Area. Free speech movement, born at Berkeley in the early 60s, like the left used to own free speech, right? And then it flipped at some point. And Kirk ends up very shrewdly going to college campuses and saying like, I'll talk to anyone, literally anyone. You sit there for 4 hours. And, his critics often accused him of like selectively editing stuff. Like that's not really true. Like you can go on YouTube and TPUSA just post 4 hour, basically like footage of like him debating anyone. And you can see him look smart, you can see him look dumb, you can see him look snarky, you can see him look,
virtuous.
Yeah, I won't go that far, but like certainly respectful. Like he didn't descend to ad hominem. Like people would say all these things about him, which like weren't really true. Like, yeah, he could be like a bit of a pissant, and he could be kind of like annoying, and he's a real kind of high school debater vibe. A lot of gotchas, a lot of stock questions. Like he could not do a debate without saying what is a woman. Like he would just, no matter what would happen, he would just say what is a woman. It was like he would have 5 or 6 things. But the point is that like he would talk to anyone except for Nick Fuentes. He saw Nick Fuentes' brand of anti-Semitism as like truly like beyond the pale. But back to like the sexuality question, like Tucker Carlson at some point was like, oh, he's a little gay kid. But like what's really interesting to me about Fuentes is that he abstains from sex with women, and part of it comes from a kind
Well,
of...
it's pretty easy to abstain from sex with women if you're gay.
Put that aside for a second, because I think there's a possibly more interesting answer to his abstention from sex of all kinds.
Okay.
Because he's not having sex with anyone as far as we know. And I think basically like he's very misanthropic, which again does not preclude the idea that he's gay at all, but there's a kind of idea that like I think he's afraid of pleasure. I think he's afraid of weakness. I think he's he reminds me of some kind of like I don't know, sort of Bolshevik or anarchist type from like a Russian novel who's just like so worried that like some collapse into a kind of love or emotion is gonna dissolve his like hardened political will. I think he also abstains from alcohol, from drugs, from almost any like kind of like decadent like pleasure behavior at all. And I think that my read on him is like gay, straight, whatever. He's got a kind of like I don't know, like ascetic kind of like self-lacerating quality to him. He's a very hard person. But anyways, there's this like cult of Nick Fuentes, which you can only really start to understand once you start to talk to the kids who like him secretly or not, and start to watch him and understand like his dark charisma.
But I disagree, because I think that like indulging in avarice and hatred is a pleasure. I mean, there is pleasure in like the spewing of transgressive, hateful ideology. So I would say he's really hitting that pleasure button. He's just getting it into like a super narrow sense. To me, he doesn't have that quality of it. I mean, I think a lot about like well, I think is there somebody who's quoted in here as like the kind of OnlyFans pimp hedonism? It's sort of like Charlie Kirk was representative of Christianity,
and the family, right? His wholesome marriage to Erica and their children and all that stuff.
Although I think you can judge a man by his wife, and I would say she's really dragging him down.
Wow.
With all of her out and out attention-seeking behavior. The flying around on a kind of trapeze.
What are you talking about?
You didn't see? Wait, you haven't seen that footage? She's like at a turning point thing that she's hosting. Timelines are not my strong suit. A month and a half after his association, and like maybe I don't think it's AI.
I think it's AI.
You haven't seen where she comes out and there's like
and she's bouncing off the thing? Yeah, that's AI.
Are you kidding me?
90% of what is about Erica Kirk and Charlie on the internet is AI. Like the We Are Charlie Kirk tribute videos are AI. All the like weird kind of like there's like all these mashups. Like there's a lot.
But what about that news, that reporting that she was putting in the eye drops in her eyes?
Well, that may or may not be true. But the thing of her like bouncing on a trampoline to like fireworks is not real.
That's not real?
Yeah. I mean, what is real, Francesca? But yeah, that's not real.
That is so... Sorry. Okay, so is that all Candace? Who's promulgating all of that stuff?
I don't know what your feed is. I don't know why it showed up.
But Candace Owens is like...
She's another important person in my piece. Just to bring it back to me in my piece, she's another person in my piece who has got a different energy from Fuentes, but is another person who is kind of like horned in on the legacy of Charlie Kirk and is like kind of doing her part to like obliterate it in some ways. You know, the conspiracy theories around his death. Obviously, Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes meet at the point of anti-Semitism.
But he was a real jerk to her when she came on when he came on her show, and he was like,
"Those two, yeah."
Did you see that where he was like, "I'm sorry, but I don't go around asking advice from women and then telling me how to live."
Yeah, he calls her dumb and stuff. No, they're not allies in any way. But like, if anti-Semitism is like, you know, the mother of all conspiracies, like you can just always just descend back to like, oh, the Jews are controlling the world. Like both of them meet at that point, just from different places. Like he comes at it from like an almost like studious place. Like he's basically immersed himself in the anti-Semitic canon, and then he'll kind of like meld it into kind of garden variety anti-Zionism. He'll read all the right anti-Zionist texts that the left likes, and then combine it with just like international Jewry is like running the world, like stuff like that. And then Candace is truly bonkers. Like she's you know, she'll grab onto anything. But this and for Charlie Kirk was at odds with a lot of the Gen Zs for two main reasons. One is that he was evangelical and not Catholic. And so almost every single college kid I talked to is Catholic, convert or cradle. And then, and because of his support for Israel. So he was a Christian Zionist. And that was one of the things that a lot of like young conservatives I talked to found like barely tolerable. And so like Charlie Kirk is like writing letters to Netanyahu, just being like, not renouncing his support for Israel, but essentially saying like, you have no idea how bad this PR problem is. Like I go to my big turning point events and I just get mobbed at the microphone by Nick Fuentes fans who are just like, why are we giving arms to Israel? What do we owe Israel? Like these kids aren't Zionists at all. They have no, you know, historical memory of like why that alliance exists. Like it's impossible for Charlie Kirk to try to explain his Zionism. He's totally out of step with the Gen Z, you know, vibe on this. And so all this is happening, and then he dies, and like there's no one left holding the line. There's no one they trust. Like they hate Ben Shapiro, all the other kind of like millennial or older sort of like, you know, Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, you name it, like zero trust. Even JD Vance, who was like, you know, I mean, he's a total isolationist, nationalist, not especially kind of fond of you know, traditional like U.S. Relationships with our allies. He's suspect. Like even Vance isn't enough.
But yeah, I mean, I think the problem with Vance is like, if you're going to be building this like light white nationalist agenda, like why are you married to a non-white woman?
Well, that's what they say.
That's what they say. But I'm also like, this is how I feel about. Did you hear that quote about Stephen Miller that Trump said, which is like something about how it was an off-the-cuff remark where he was like, you know, we don't want Stephen to say everything he really thinks, because if he said everything he thinks, you know, Stephen wants everybody in this country to look like him, and we don't need him to say all those things. And I'm like, okay, so if I'm Stephen Miller, who is Jewish, and I'm gathering all these forces for white nationalism, but I'm Jewish, there's always gonna come a point where everybody who's left in the white nationalist room is gonna turn to you and be like, you're the only Jew in the room. Like, and that's why I don't get JD Vance either. I mean, he does seem to throw his wife, there's a quote you have in here, he does seem to throw his wife under the bus. What does he say about how he hopes that she's gonna convert to Christianity?
No, but he also like, it was seen as throwing him around the bus, but like I was there. So this was at the University of Mississippi where I spent most of my reporting. So Vance comes, like basically Kirk got killed on a speaking tour. He was at Utah Valley University, and he was going to come to Ole Miss on like October 31st or something. So I was at Ole Miss, and Vance and Erica Kirk came in instead. That's the place where they hugged on stage, and then a million conspiracy theories bloomed about
them, like their
because
romance.
She like touched his head for like a half a second, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, they're dating." But like, and then he threw Usha under the bus allegedly, and so there's like fantasy. There's like this fantasy that she's going to divorce him.
Okay, don't you have a direct quote here? No, it's not a direct quote, but doesn't. So what did he say? It sounds pretty throw under the bussy.
If you were there for the whole thing, which I was, like, there were all these other moments where he would say things that were like barely acceptable to the room, like because Vance was getting like mobbed the same way that Charlie Kirk would. They were like basically asking him to answer for like Zionism.
I know, but let's just think, it's a dangerous proposition to be talking, basically dog whistling about how only white Americans are the only real Americans, and then be married to a non-white woman.
Yes, that's true. But
it's a dumb move.
By the standard of like some of the kids I'm talking to, like JD Vance sounds like a multiculturalist. Like he was basically like, he would say stuff to these kids. He would say like, well, I respect Usha's freedom of religion, and like, so he would say like, yes, I hope she converts to Catholicism, but if she doesn't, like, I love her very much, and I hope she stays.
But it's I think what they're zeroing in on is he's a hypocrite. If he really cared about white nationalism the way he seems to care about it, he would have married a white woman. You can't have it both. You can't be like flying the flag of white nationalism out in public and then not doing it at home.
He's caught in, well, first of all, I would dispute that he flies the flag of white nationalism. I think he's more careful. And I think he actually talks about nationalism, and he talks about, I think he talks about nationalism, and he talks about religiosity, and he talks about heritage in ways that if you were to meld them, it can look a lot like white nationalism. But he will not, he will, and he does this on the record all the time, will talk about a multicultural nationalism. But I will say that like his flirtation with the heritage American concept, which is hard to read outside of a white nationalist realm, because you're looking at like, I don't know, like patriots with like buckles on their hats, basically, like what is a heritage American? It's like a hard thing to define. He flirts with it, but then 3 months later he'll say, well, actually, no, like the foundational principles of the Declaration of Independence were important. Like he's constantly like in this dialogue, like he's always seesawing, and I feel like he's always trying on ideas for size. But I will say that like, yeah, I think one of the reasons that people find J.D. Vance so enigmatic and complicated is that he'll talk about like, oh, you know, my grandparents came from the holler, and that makes them and me more American than it does a recent immigrant. And then Usha Vance, yeah. And not just because of her identity, because of her Indian identity in particular. Like the kids that were, and I call them kids, but we're talking like 18, 22-year-olds, people who are in college, are obsessed with Indian immigrants, high-skilled immigrants on H-1B visas. Absolutely obsessed. Okay. And so that like a lot of there's a certain amount of kind of anti-Indian animus and racism that comes from the idea that, especially at kind of big STEM-focused state schools where a lot of these kids want to go into engineering and stuff, they're worried about AI. They're also worried about, I think there should be more worried about AI than H-1B visas, but they often just train their eye on the H-1B visas because it's easier. It's just a tangible thing. And so they say Usha Vance, and Nick Fuentes is super racist about stuff like this, you know, from an identitarian standpoint and also to an extent from a labor force. Like, oh, why are we giving these jobs to these foreigners, instead of taking care of our own? I think J.D. Vance is caught in all of that. Like he's in the middle of someone who actively does want to limit H-1B visas. But I don't know, he fell in love with Usha. He's a human being.
I don't know. I mean, he's also somebody who completely sold his mother down the river for his own literary success. So to me, he's always been, I don't see like a lot of pathos in him. I think of him as like more pathological, I guess. But
I don't know about pathos either, but I certainly think he's complicated, and he's constantly trying to find himself, I think.
But I think the kids can smell hypocrisy, and I think he's a hypocrite.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them talk to me about this. They sound like liberals in an interesting way. They still talk about his never Trump past.
Yeah.
But from the other way.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, you weren't with Trump all along?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. He's a turncoat. He's an opportunist.
They don't trust his financial backing in his 2022 Senate race from Peter Thiel because they are skeptical of techno elites. And Vance is caught here, right? He's kind of skeptical of techno elites because he's a populist, wants to bring back the Rust Belt, but he's also, super buddy with kind of, the AI czar and that whole, he is caught between a lot of things. And so, yeah, there's this kind of anti-Indian racism that is either coming from an identitarian place or a sort of visa obsession place. Truly, they're obsessed with H-1B visas. Like, you would go into a room and the only things that any of these kids want to talk about is Israel and H-1B visas. It's like there are no other issues at all. They will not talk about anything. Like, there's no Doge anymore. There's no war in Ukraine. There's no, like, any issue that you think might matter to the right. They're just like, where are you on Israel? Where are you on H-1Bs? And if you don't say the right thing, which is ban all high-skilled immigrants and sever our relationship with Israel completely, you are like suspect.
What about family values and Judeo-Christian values? What do they say about that?
It's Charlie Kirk shit. They don't even think about it.
They don't care?
I don't know if they care, but it's just like, well, first of all, a lot of people agree. There's not a lot of dispute on that. But no, it's like Charlie Kirk is someone who, you were at the memorial, and it was hours of Christian rock. It was... Christian
rock is not Christianity in my book,
It was why not? Can you just sing the gospel?
No. I don't think so. I don't know if I could really put a fine point on it without thinking about it more. But no, I'm also like, I come from a more, so I'm Christian and come from a more, I mean, I wouldn't say I would say aesthetically conservative. I feel like I'm a little...
Are you Catholic?
I'm an Episcopalian in the Anglo-Catholic tradition. So it's like the liturgy at the church I attend is like more Catholic than the Catholic liturgy.
They kind of sing it. They're kind of chanting. That's kind of Christian rock.
Anytime that white people have their hands over their head and sway, I'm like, I gotta get
No,
out of
that's
here.
that's evangelical. But
Yeah.
but the point is, like, on the family values thing, like you brought up like 5 minutes ago, there was this guy this kid at Clemson who was the president of the TPUSA chapter at Clemson, really smart guy from Bucks County, Pennsylvania. By the way, a lot of like northeastern refugees down there at the state schools. They don't want anything to do with colleges north of the Mason-Dixon line. They just want to like go party down there. Anyways, he was basically saying like you just kind of say this plaintive stuff to me like and he kind of saw Charlie Kirk as suspect, but he would say like it's really sad that Charlie, who represented loving family values and Christian values, is being supplanted by these kind of OnlyFans pimps. And so he sees it as a zero sum. That like there's only so many hours in the day, and there's only so many I don't know whatever's in your algorithm to look at. And it's like, well, instead of Charlie Kirk being there, now it's Andrew Tate and Nick Fuentes, and he's like, that's sad.
It is sad, but also it's a lot easier to just hate women and organize jewelry than it is to like do the work of being a family man and be part of like a larger faith community. Do you know what I mean? Like that actually takes, as somebody who's a member of a few different faith communities, like being in community with people or aka people who like have regular jobs, whatever. If being in a group sustained over time where people have expectations of you is challenging. Whereas just spinning, just spinning these, like what Nick Fuentes does, like it's frictionless. You're just saying awful stuff all the time. I don't think it has a lot of like spiritual grist for the mill, in my opinion. Now, maybe I'm underestimating him. I mean, is it hard to be Satan? Do you know what I mean? I guess that's an interesting, so I was reading the book of Job. My friend got me the annotated version.
As one does.
Yeah. I got the flu, and then my kids got the flu. So it was like
Do you read it to them?
No.
Good.
Not yet. I hope that they are not of the persuasion. Like, so my favorite two books of the Bible are Ecclesiastes and the book of Job, which is like from a character breakdown perspective, I think.
Why? What happens in Ecclesiastes? What goes on in that
Ecclesiastes
book?
is great. He's basically just like, everything is vanity. Vanity is of vanities. There's nothing new under the sun. You're just gonna die. It's basically like Gen Z nihilism, but from like 5,000 years ago.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. Really, there is nothing new under the sun. Everybody's been feeling like you're played out and there's no reason to do anything for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Why was I talking about this?
What's real Christianity?
Does
Nick Fuentes embody it?
Oh, yeah, but like, okay, the devil. So one of the earliest...
sympathy for the devil. Should we feel
Sympathy for the devil. So one of the... You can, if you're a classicist or religious studies, you can correct me. I'm pretty sure that one of the earliest incidences of the devil in the Bible is he shows up as the advocate. Interesting. Lawyers. Interesting idea. He shows up as the advocate in the book of Job. And basically God is like, oh my God, I've got this guy Job. He's the best. He's so righteous. He's so faithful. He does everything. And the advocate, Satan, is like, well, but what if you took everything from him? Would he still be so righteous? And basically Satan, the advocate, serves this function of really allowing God to test out his theses of what a good man is. And then through the book of Job, have you read it?
I have read the book of Job, but not the other one.
Okay. Well, basically, it's just, it like gives God an opportunity to say why the good suffer. And nobody's really pleased with his answer. But anyway, so I guess the role of the devil as Nick Fuentes could be to push on the ideas of what a good life is. And maybe he is succeeding in fulfilling his role.
Yeah, I don't think he has a vision for the good life. It's, although I have to say that, like, once I finished this piece, I basically, like, rewarded myself by, like, not watching any of him. Like, I haven't watched, like, a minute. I've just kind of, like, turned the page. But I had to kind of immerse myself to an extent to understand what these college kids were seeing and what they might like in him. I think a lot of it, what they liked is the kind of transgression, the sense of humor. He's smart and well-read, which gives him a kind of power because he can code switch. Mm-hmm. Like the famous kind of interview he did with Tucker Carlson in October, which happened a couple days before the Ole Miss event that we were talking about. Like, it's kind of worth watching in full because in some ways Carlson goes easy on him. In other ways, he almost tries to, like in an avuncular way, tries to like steer him towards some like like more righteous path.
Yeah, of course. Like with family, that like having a wife does have value.
Yeah, he's like, young man, like, are you sure you don't want to try like loving a woman? And Nick Fuentes is like, I don't have time for that. Like you know, whatever, like whatever shit he says. But there's what's the point that relates to all this that happened in the Tucker thing that I wanted to talk about? Oh yeah, like he was talking about like Stephen Walt and John Mearsheimer's The Israel Lobby, and he was like, so he was like, hey Nick, like, you know, how'd you go from being like a, you know, Zionist, cosmopolitan, you know, globalist, you know, George W. Bush supporter to being whatever you are now? And he's like, well, I read The Israel Lobby, and you could just see like some, I don't know, like Hassan Piker type being like, oh, I love The Israel Lobby too, like it's true, like we shouldn't, you know, AIPAC is so powerful, like you like, you know, you get a little deeper and like, no, man, this guy like hates Jews. Like he basically thinks it's un-American to be anything but some definition of a white Christian, you know, born here, heritage American, whatever. He thinks it's all the famous tropes, just like packaged in a new and kind of slick way, but like the internal subversion, whatever. He's just bringing it in his like multimedia way to like a new generation who hasn't seen it. Anyways, whatever.
But I was thinking, I liked, because I think that I would say maybe he does. Now I'm into my own idea that he's like serving some larger eschatological
You sure it's not Epstein who's the devil? We got to decide here, you know. Like.
But what? Oh no, I had a thought. What was my thought? Nick Fuentes, Christian.
Well, you're saying does he like, I don't know, kind of like poke holes in some idea of the good life or
Israel. No, the Great Replacement Theory. So his like, I would assume that he's really into the Great Replacement Theory.
Probably,
right?
I mean, they all are, so he must be. I mean,
which is that like the Jewish people of the world who control everything are trying to bring non-white people into America to eradicate the white race. I didn't know
it originated with the Jews too. I thought it was just the Democrats.
Well, but I mean, come on. If we're talking Democrats, who do people think we're really talking about? This is like where I got in this fight with the tankies online. They were like, no, we want to kill landlords. And I was like, are you trying to say Jewish people? And they were like, no. And I'm like, I'm not an idiot. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know what you're saying.
I don't want to wade into your fight with the tankies. That's between you and the tankies.
But here's what I was thinking about.
Nick Fuentes is kind of a tanky in his own shoe way.
These people are insane. I can't talk. Don't talk to me in the comments. I spoke with the rector at my church, and I'm not arguing with you anymore. I can't do it. It's for my sanity.
Do you think they're here now? They're following you?
I don't know. I guess that would be, I don't know.
Yeah.
The vigor with which they, you know, it's like a potent mix of like loving communism and hating women is like, you know, going to explode. But I was thinking about the Great Replacement Theory. And then I was thinking, remember all those articles about the demographic collapse like a decade ago about how like the Republicans, it was like going to be good night to them because and then I was like, okay, so if I'm right wing, that doesn't sound that much different than the Great Replacement Theory.
You're trying to get me to say that the Great Replacement Theory is true.
No, I am not trying to get you to say anything. The point is that people are like, the Great Replacement Theory, and then 7 years before they were publishing endless amounts of articles about how the demographics are shifting in the United States, and there's so many like non-white people who are always voting Democrat. It was just assumed they would always vote Democrat.
Yeah,
and then
I would say two things. Like in that era that you're talking about, happened kind of in the Obama era, basically, when, you know, the Republicans did this big, like, you know, in 2012, they did this big autopsy, like, what did we do wrong? We need to moderate on immigration. There was just kind of an idea among, like, Democratic partisans that, like, if you just continue on autopilot based on the Democrat, not by, like, importing people specifically, but, like, literally just by saying, like, oh, if you look at birth rates, if you look at whatever, and you look at the way that, like, Latinos and other new immigrants are voting, like, we'll be great. We can just set it and forget it. But, like, okay, what's happened since then, like, let's veer away from the Great Replacement stuff. What's happened since then has been pretty interesting because it didn't end up being true in one specific way, which is that if you look at the way that working class minorities voted in 2024 and for the last decade prior to that, it was increasingly Republican. And so, like, the way Trump wins in 2024 is with this multiracial coalition. So the really tricky sort of like ethnic politics question that's like bedeviling the young right is if you want to go full white nationalist, you're about to screw over the entire coalition that just got you in the office, in the White House to begin with. So that, like, the Fuentes program is essentially like a complete dead end. Like it ends in nothing, and he doesn't vote, so it ends in nothing, or something much worse, some violent insurrection. But like, you're looking, the more the young right goes in this ethno-nationalist direction, like, you can be scared of it from what does this mean for society? What does this mean for the idea of America? What does this mean for liberalism, democracy? But like, from an electoral standpoint, there are Republicans who are saying this is suicide. Like, we just finally got all these African-American, Latino, Asian voters, from all over the place, from New York City to wherever, completely dissatisfied with Democrats, switching their votes to Trump. And now all of a sudden, within a year, in this post-Charlie Kirk moment, you have the ascendancy of these sort of like much more rabid ethno-nationalist figures who are saying, yeah, forget all those new voters. We're going to go straight white identity. Like, that's crazy.
Huh. I know, but I guess Nick Fuentes, he doesn't care, right?
I don't know. Yeah, he has some more nihilistic project, and it might have to do with his own career or some. I don't know. But yeah, like, I don't know. Yeah.
I guess that's which is what I was thinking about. I'm going to talk about the tankies more. I'm sorry. I know it's so distasteful. Because what I kept getting in the argument about was like, it's just not efficacious. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't build, you're not going to change hearts and minds by praising Stalin, right? Just like you're not going to maintain this multi-ethnic coalition by veering hard into white nationalism.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's like the ideologies might be really appealing. It might feel really sexy to like, what are they always talking about? Killing Nazis. This is on the tankies. Killing Nazis and landlords and whatever. But like, it just doesn't work. And I guess that's what I don't understand about a lot of people, but I think about it more from the left, because I guess I'm on the left. A lot of people have, if you like really drill down into it, have ideas that just don't really function. Like, there has to be some kind of immigration control in our country. I think like, do people have this, like bleeding heart liberals have this platonic ideal of like open borders and we open our arms to everyone? But the reality is like that suppresses the wages of people, of working class people who live in the country already. Do you know what I mean? It's like there has to be some of these structures. And like talking about the reality of things, like talking about from the right, maintaining your multi-ethnic coalition, and talking about on the left, like what does actual sane immigration policy look like? Nobody wants to do it because they're just like, it's sexy to be on these ideological fringes that have nothing to do with any possibly reality, you know?
Yeah.
But I guess that's just because like in the internet, it's free to have an idea. So you can just have all these terrible ideas and nobody's charging you.
You get drunk on your own success. Like, the GOP ran essentially on immigration and won in 2020, immigration and inflation. Mm-hmm. And they won on in a big way. And then, it looks like right now, like, if public opinion polls are to be believed, that they overplayed their hand on the ICE stuff. Like, it's like all these people are saying like, well, they've lost Rogan, but like that's significant. Like when Andrew Schultz and Theo Von and Joe Rogan say like, whoa, like, yo, you just deported my landscaper. Like, that actually does matter because a ton of people listen to those guys and they're seen as like common sense bros. So yeah, within a year, like, the gnome DHS is just like evidently overstepped their bounds, and like I'm sure the Republicans will lose the House in the midterms, but I don't know what's going to happen in 3 years in the presidential
election. What do you
election.
think about the Senate?
I don't know.
Okay, with that, we're going to take a break. And if you want to hear the second half of the episode, you can go to patreon.com/criticalbabetheory.
Wait, they only get this one for free?
Yeah, bro. I'm like a single mom. I'm a part-time single mom over here.
What's a part-time single mom? Sometimes you're not
I don't
single
believe.
mom?
Oh God, I'm not supposed to say this. I'll say this on the second. I'll put it up.
Put a second out.
If you want to hear what I mean by that, come back and see the other side of the paywall. Okay, thanks. We'll be right back.